that we like the most, and we're going to answer it at the end doing a live whiteboard video. We're going to film it for YouTube. So this video will go on YouTube, on the 4.0 Solutions YouTube channel. It'll be a 15-minute response to the final question that we think is the one that we want to answer together. But for the first 30 minutes, we'll answer the questions with the mic, and then we'll do the whiteboard video, okay? All right, with that, can we play the recap from yesterday? Yes, awesome. Thank you.
Week's been great so far. This is my second day. Man, was today a day.
So far, it's been really action-packed. A lot of good things coming out from today's talks.
So we opened the day with Abelara, who gave an incredible keynote speech on change management and the age of AI.
Being that bridge with the people that are using the technology builds trust. And from there, the stress and the anxiety associated with the changes starts to come down.
And our two title sponsors, Fluff Automation and Ducto Automation, absolutely crushed it.
It's just amazing.
Thank you, brother.
This job is evolving into the foundation where all of these AI apps will come.
We're able to see, here's how we can actually set things up, and then AI on top of it.
There's a lot of demos and a lot of cool projects going around.
Seen a lot of awesome companies here, really impressed with what they're doing.
Really learned a lot of new tools that are out there.
Yeah, the opportunity to connect with people we probably wouldn't have had ourselves. Probably the most gratifying thing. These are end users, right? These aren't just like random people, which is awesome.
There are many vendors here who understand developing relationships with end users is all about talking to them about their problems and offering solutions.
It's crazy to see how fast the vendors here are moving compared to vendors in other spaces, and just how applicable it is for us as manufacturers.
It is like a contextualized, managed data pipeline. It's perfect for this space. It's perfect for ProveIt.
A lot of information that we think is very valuable for the market. Is the beverage, I think, give me a lot of insight about what's going on right now.
I come from a very technical software background, so industrial automation is new to me. I learned so much of processes, machines, and how digital companies can scale.
We're not just giving you an architecture, we're giving regular passive stuff. It's also
Most appreciative of the community. I'm appreciative of the conversations that are happening here, and I'm appreciative of all of the members of the community who foster these conversations.
Yeah, I think we're good. Is it on over there? Yeah. All right, awesome. And let me just say thank you real quick. So we asked Fuse to be the sponsor of this event, so why is it we're doing this morning? So Sandy Laura was originally going to give the keynote this morning. Sandy did a keynote last year, actually was our highest rated keynote on how to identify burnout, which is a huge problem in our industry, and then how to mitigate it. I personally have burned out twice in my career, and you can't come back from burnout. So one of the bad things about burnout is that it requires a fundamental change in your life. For me, it means I gotta go somewhere and not talk to anyone for 6 weeks, and then come back and do something different. And it's happened to me twice in my career. Sandy was gonna speak about burnout. What we're probably gonna do is just post her video again. Her daughter's getting married on Saturday, and apparently that is a complete shit show. And so she really can't come to Dallas. She's gotta stay in Arkansas and get the wedding fixed. So I reached out to Dylan last week. I said, hey dude, we're in the car, we're both on a 30-minute drive, we both have no time, and we're like, hey, do you want to just do a live Q&A? Let's shoot a whiteboard video. He said, absolutely, let's do it. We don't have to prep it, everything's off the cuff. But we reached out to Fuse and asked Fuse to be the sponsor of this event. Here's why. So Fuse is going to present tomorrow, right? You guys are presenting tomorrow, and then their workshop's in the afternoon. I think it's really, really important that everyone, if you're in the MES space, and if you're in the L3 space at all, that you check out Fuse's MES offering. The number one thing that I've heard about Fuse is I didn't know anything about them, and their tech is amazing. Okay, so we asked them to sponsor so that we could get their slide up there, so that we can get people to go see their MES platform. Okay, so if you're looking at MES, if you're in the space of MES, Fuse is where you want to go. It's MES for ERP that focused making it as easy as possible for OT to integrate into MES that natively integrates into ERP. Okay, that at the end of the day, that's the summary. All right, with that, Dylan, do you want to explain yourself real quick? I'm going to say some words about you, but introduce yourself. Put the our Slido up there, and they can start asking questions.
Yeah, so I'm Dylan DuFresne with Abelara. Glenn and I co-founded the company about a year ago. I've got about a bit over a decade now of experience in the manufacturing space, but about 2 or 3 decades worth of time in that single decade worth of calendar. And starting with PLCs, pulling wire, electrical pieces, climbed up and down the stack from PLCs to SCADA to MES to some ERP, up and down a few times. And now our mission is to empower the end users to make their own decisions, to use their own products, and to have ownership and accountability of the products that their integrators and the tasks that they outsource are done for them.
So I want to point something out. So Dylan is one of 4 people in the Industry 4 community that the first time I met them, I knew that they were game changers. So Amy Williams from Skellig is one of those people. Literally, when Amy was a junior engineer at Skellig, and I think it was the first presentation I ever gave, and she was in there, and based on the question she asked, I knew she was a rock star. And then just years later, she turns into who she is. Dylan is also one of those people. Literally, the first time he was in a mastermind session, I said, Dylan DuFresne he is a gifted, actually it was when you did your step 1 practical. It was the step 1 practical that Dylan supported other people in doing. 2 other ones are Matt Paris from GE Appliances. He was already kind of a rock star, but he's moved way up in the company, and he's a huge voice when it comes to SESME. And then Jeff Schrader from Hyatt. We only knew him as JS. We actually didn't know we didn't know his name. We just knew he was JS. And we were like, that guy is gifted. Okay. Dylan is one of those 4 people who over the last 5 years has just skyrocketed. All right, so with that, let's start with when will Jeff's keynote be available for us to share. The AV team has a month to give us to turn everything around. So we will start seeing. Yes, Tanya, go ahead.
Hi, our AV team is awesome, and we're actually going to start turning things around on Monday.
Okay, awesome.
So yes, do it up.
All right, each ProveIt session is an ideality. It is, some of them are. Some of them definitely are not. Can you give your perspectives on technology in relationship to dynamic and non-uniform information? I'm gonna let Dylan go first and then I'll back it up.
Yeah, so any presentation like this, I think this one less than most, but even at the ProveIt conference here, everyone's showing off the best of what they can do.
Right.
Everything is the art of the possible, the best feature sets, and what they believe the most valuable solution for the most common problem would be. The reality is almost every site out there is brownfield. Almost every end user out there isn't going to be able to afford the biggest, brightest, newest solution.
Even greenfield is brownfield.
Even
Yes.
greenfield is brownfield.
Yeah.
And because the decisions made a year ago as they were architecting the system, as they were building the site, as before they even laid the concrete. I mean, even the technology, greenfield is brownfield, but even when you're laying the pipe in the concrete, it changes in 6 months. And with that, with brownfield, nothing's perfect, nothing's as you expect. And one of the things we see at a lot of these presentations, if you read between the lines, and I think you should go down to the exhibitor booths downstairs and ask every single one of us this exact question, is those little boxes on the bottom, the little robot, the little controller, the little PLCs, the little settings, that always gets ignored. That's brownfield. That's where things aren't clean, and that's when things aren't as they are expected to be. And they're oftentimes glossed over in these. And if you don't know how you're going to connect the shiny new toy to that brownfield reality, that non-ideal situation, then you don't know if it's going to solve your problem or not. You just know that you were told it was going to solve it.
So everyone agrees that Unified Namespace is non-standard. Like probably the #1 complaint I get is, why don't you write a book that tells us how to do it? I have written a book to tell you how to do it. I just haven't given you the book. Intelligent Integration uses it, 4.0 Solutions uses it. We use it internally. It was a conscious decision. And the reason why is because the moment I come out with a book that says this is how you do Unified Namespace, everyone else will stop trying to do it some other way. Okay? why is it in our industry, we're constantly doing things some other way? Because what we do is dynamic and evolving. And so the way that we think about how we solve problems is much more important than the steps we take to solve problems, right? And so Unified Namespace was designed to be the most flexible architecture in Industry 4. Actually, it was designed before Industry 4 was even coined. The first Unified Namespace was built in 2005 using control logics, RS links, Data Highway Plus, PLC5, InTouch, and Microsoft Excel over Dynamic Data Exchange. And the screens that had been built in InTouch to control the process, where each InTouch client had its own license, was not useful to supervisors and managers. So I just used Dynamic Data Exchange to bring it out into Microsoft Excel and organize it the way the mine was organized. Cargill, Lansing, Surface, Underground, and then broke it up by sections, and then put the belts in, the conveyors in, and put the e-stops in. And it was semantically organized so the supervisors could just open an Excel spreadsheet that they didn't need to have a special license for. And over Dynamic Data Exchange, it populated, the business populated, and they could see the status of the business. And I was even able to do color coding, red, green, yellow. That is not how we do Unified Namespace today. But if I had written a book on doing Unified Namespace in 2005, I would have said, do it that way, right? So how do you handle dynamic and non-uniform information? The answer is to the best of your ability. Right now we use red and blue schemas. So we use ISA 95 Part 2 as our general structure of a business. Enterprise site, area line, cell. Most people don't even use cell, okay? Some people don't call it line, some people call it asset. That's all fine. As long as people know, and rather than telling people what they have available to make decisions, you tell them how to find what they have available to make decisions. That's what Unified Namespace is. Okay, so we use red, which is all the standardized stuff. That's the stuff that your digital transformation team, that's OEE. How do we structure an OEE namespace? We do it exactly this way. It's instantiated OEE. There's an in-feed namespace, an out-feed namespace, and a waste namespace. And inside the in-feed, out-feed, and waste namespace, you have an in-feed count, you have a count ID, you have last change. That's structured. But right alongside of that, you have an edge namespace that comes from a DH445 motion controller from Siemens coming off a printing press. And what you've got in there is a combination of non-standard tags showing you unwinder speed in meters per minute and feet per minute. But they live together, red and blue. That's how you handle it. I spend more of my time teaching people how to think than I do how to do. Okay, and you should be doing the same thing. I think that top one is the one we should answer in the whiteboard.
Sounds good.
Okay. How does UNS handle evolving misaligned data, flock SCADA, GIS mismatch, schema drift without new standards? There is no ISA 95. Have you seen or solved this? Go ahead.
Yeah, this goes right into the red versus blue namespaces we talked about here. One of the common things I get when a customer comes to me when a client asks, what is a unified namespace? And how do I know that the data going through it is trustworthy? The data science team sees that there's an OEE namespace here, but they don't know what it means, where it came from, why it came from, or where it did. And with that, the concept of red versus blue, in my opinion, and Walker chime in on this, is often misinterpreted as blue turning into red.
Correct.
And that is not the case. Red data has to be red data as close to the source as feasibly possible. And the blue data is where the site, the domain experts, and the plants, and the individuals who know the process the best can solve their own problems their own ways, use their experience, and build upon that foundation. The red data is the minimum required namespace, the minimum required data that the business has identified is required to meet the needs and the objectives and the strategy of the business. And you have this red pillar in the middle, but anywhere from the top all the way to the bottom on the PLCs, you can have various leafs that go at different points those are the blue namespaces. And whenever a blue namespace is identified by the larger enterprise as supporting a key objective, it can be promoted to red at any point in time by committee, by rule, by the bureaucracy of the business, because that's what's been required to meet that objective. But blue is where you're allowed to be creative, where you have that sandbox and where you, the domain expert, can really make and affect change.
The biggest problem that people run into, I see, it's software developers. Okay, so software developers are the ones, or actually those who have computer science degrees. Let's put it that way. Those who have computer science degrees are taught in school incorrectly to think of everything as an object that can be defined. It is perfectly fine to think of everything as an object. It is not okay to say that every object can be defined. Okay? So when computer scientists come into a plant, what they try to do is they try to put everything into a nice, neat, clean definition. Our tanks are always going to look like this. Tank dot level 1, tank dot level 2, tank dot level 3. Okay? And so the tank is the atomic object. It's the class that they defined. We defined a class of tank. Okay? But that tank, that class is the atomic class. That is, there's no class below it at all. It doesn't inherit from any other classes. It's the atomic class. Until you realize, I want to add a 4th level sensor. Damn, I really fucking wish that the sensor was the atomic object. So do you go all the way back to the drawing board and go, no, the asset is no longer the atomic object. Now we're going all the way down to the sensor. So now assets are going to be made up of definitions, instantiations, and sensors. Until you realize, wait a minute, I want to change the firmware on the sensor, and that firmware on the sensor creates 4 new data points that we didn't consider in the beginning. And we're not changing it on all the sensors. So I have 100 sensors of version 1, and I've got 4 new sensors of version 2. Part of the reason that organizations get really stuck in the mud when it comes to digital transformation is because they don't collect data as it is, they try to collect it as they want it modeled. And Unified Namespace is designed to allow you to do both. Collect it the way you modeled it, red, and collect it as it is, blue. Dylan explains it in a completely different way. To him, red is collect it as it was, as it is, and blue is how it's modeled. It doesn't matter that he says red and blue is different than the way I say red and blue is. It just matters that he's your architect or I'm your architect, and that you learn how I talk. Okay?
And I want to add one quick thing at the end there. Is a word you probably heard a lot on stage, because I know a lot of graph databases and ontology platforms have been on display downstairs.
Yes.
And this ties into this very well, because these standards, the ISA 95s, the S88s, and the different standards of how you model data, the SESB profiles and all that, are what should be. They're what's mandated as what should be. In ontology is inherently the definition of what is. And that's a key distinction there, where the UNS is intended to be the definition and the current events of what is.
Will products be relevant in 5 years outside of open source with the onset of AI and bespoke solutions? Of course. Of course, products are going to be relevant in 5 years. Are they going to be relevant in their current form? Some of them. Some of them. Look at Ignition, for example. Ignition is it was 2002, it was factory PMI. So however many years, 24 years is how long Ignition has existed. If we want to say Ignition, that's 2008. It is a legacy platform. I mean, by definition, it is legacy. Everyone saw Inductive Automation's presentation yesterday, right? Okay. In 2012, why do people listen to me? Because I'm not a very nice person, so it's not like people go, hey, this is a really friendly dude, I want to listen to him. People don't listen to me because I'm friendly. People listen to me because I've won 2 engineering awards and everyone wanted to know how I did it. And they put up with me to find out how I did it. Okay, that is not lost on me, just so we're clear. In 2012, I was the lead engineer on the largest standalone SCADA system build in the world. To this day, it is still the largest. Sam Elsner actually referenced it yesterday. It is still the largest standalone SCADA system build in the world running on a single server. And we did it with Ignition 7.7. For those of you who've been working with Ignition, that was right when templates came out. I think 7.7 is where templates came out. The gateway area network didn't exist. Kepware's API did not exist. They were created for that project. Okay, the gateway area network made it possible for us to build that solution. And for those of you who are not familiar with the solution, it was built in Ignition. We use a distributed architecture when distributed didn't exist in Ignition. Okay, Colby and Carl, I always forget who actually wrote the module over the weekend. They wrote WebDev also for that project. WebDev, Gateway Area Network, Colby wrote one of them, Carl wrote the other one. They did it over a weekend, both of them. Okay, we did 6 servers distributed. We did 11 million data points covering 5 states, 2,000 concurrent users, 2 million daily alarms in Ignition in 2012. All right, that's why people listen to me. Okay, they want to know how we did that. $1.6 million, when the next closest bid was 25 million. Ignition in 2012 is not the same platform it is today. Not even close. What you saw yesterday, 8.3 is a fundamentally it should have been Ignition 9. 8.3 is not a major release, it is a foundational platform change. Okay? Is Ignition going to be here in 5 years based on what I just laid out to you? Yesterday, you can deploy an entire enterprise infrastructure using classic IT DevOps strategies. In 2012, we had to patch a bunch of shit together with modules that were written over the weekend. Is Ignition going to be here in 5 years? Yes, absolutely no question. The question is, what will we define Ignition as in 5 years? And to answer the AI question, the AI question is, if a platform if any piece of software does not allow you to manipulate it externally using AI agents like Claude Desktop, then it will not exist. That is not me doing the, how you have to tell people your competitors are doing this, you'll be out of business. No, that's fucking math. That statement right there is math. Because none of you are going to work with a product. Where's Jared? Is Jared in here? Are the Intelligent guys in here?
He might be Intelligent.
All right, I want you to go talk to any 21-year-old developer. Jared's 21, he'll be 22 in March. Ask any young developer what type of products they want to work with, and they're going to all give you the same answer. I can deploy it in Docker. If I can't deploy it in a container, I don't want to work with it. And I want to be able to manipulate it using an AI agent. What's really going to change about products over the next 5 years is not the functions they provide, but how we work with them. They will absolutely be here in 5 years. We will just define them differently. How do you reckon, which one do you want to do? Oh, how about, let's go to the basics. What are the basics that an OT engineer should be for the subject matter expert at the end user? What are the basics, the things they need to know to be the SME at an end user?
To be the SME at the end user as an OT engineer, I'm assuming you're an integrator at this point. So speaking as an integrator who's coming into an end user's facility, you are always expected to be the SME, whether or not you are, whether or not you've ever seen that thing before, and whether or not anything. You are the SME because you're there to see that. And everybody who's been in that position here knows it. I've already heard some laughs in the audience. And the biggest thing that matters is first principles. How and why do things work at all? And what is a PLC? What is logic? And the biggest piece of that is, why does this matter to the operator? If you, as the OT engineer, go in assuming you know everything there is to know about that subject, you're probably going to fail. You're going to fall flat, it's not going to work, and whatever you were there to do is either going to be way more stressful than it needed to be, or it's just not going to happen. If you go in as the OT engineer, the controls engineer, the automation engineer, anybody, that is when, if you do that and you go in and talk to the operator, you go to the machine, you watch the people do their job, you watch them do their work, you involve them in the process, and just make this all happen.
Josh, come up here.
That is when you will learn the system and the subject from the true subject matter expert, because it's not you, it's the operator.
All right, so it's a good answer. Number one, you better be the subject matter, to be the subject matter expert at the end user, you better be the person everyone turns to when they have a question. If they don't turn to you when they have a question, you're not the subject matter expert. Okay, you want to know who I want to talk to? I want to talk to the jerk in the room. You want to know who the people you want to talk to are? They're the jerks. You want to know why they're jerks? It's not because they're bad people. It's because they're frustrated with everybody. Because they know things everyone else doesn't know. Okay, that's who you want to talk to. When I go in a room, I want the guy who came in, he plopped himself down, he fucking rolls his eyes at me, he's still wearing his hard hat, he's leaning back like this, he's looking at all the managers in the room like they don't know anything because they don't. I want to talk to that guy.
And that guy's never the OT engineer.
That's never the OT engineer. It's right. But here's how, at the end user, you can sufficiently call yourself the SME when you are the person people come to when they have a question in your domain. Okay? Number two, here's a skill. All right? Here's insight to all of you who work in the end user. Okay, here we go. I love doing this. I love going into a manufacturer and they ask me, they want me to digitally transform. I'm going to answer two questions here. There was like something about I ultimately want to get to digital supply chain. We're going to answer that question later. I'm going to do the first part of our answer. This is a question I'd love to ask manufacturers. I love to get all the people in the room and ask them to tell me how it is they sell stuff and how they plan to manufacture stuff, and then how they manufacturing, how they monitor and control the plant, how they monitor and control the assets, and how they manage the raw materials and finished goods, how they ship, how they get paid, and how they do it all again. I love to walk into a room full of people who think they know everything and make them look like they know shit. Because what happens is the vast majority, there's no one in here, I promise you, there is no one in here who can tell me exactly how this works in their organization. You want to be the subject matter expert? You be able to explain that in detail. We sell in this platform. When a sale takes place, the customer service rep does this. They instantiate this. It gets moved over through an Excel spreadsheet over here. Somebody manually enters it into the ERP system. It gets distributed out to some black box. We don't know who actually does the scheduling, and we actually don't know who builds the bill of materials. It gets to the MES system. There is no MES system. The MES system is an Excel spreadsheet on the supervisor's desk. We have a world-class SCADA system though, and we have world-class automation. I'm not really quite, I do know that we're using product Y for our shipping software, our warehouse management. But I don't think they actually use it. I know we pay for it though. If you want to be the subject matter expert, be able to explain that workflow, because that is literally every manufacturer on the planet, right there. Mm-hmm. But start by being the person people in your organization come to answer their questions. If you ask the question, okay, Walker, that's abstract. How do I do that? Well, don't be this person. We all have a tendency to master one thing and then try to protect our mastery of it at all costs. Don't do that, okay? I recommend that people get to 80% in a domain and move to the next domain. Jason Doy, right here. Jason and I worked together at I2R in 2012, right? 2012? We were both engineers. Our desks were, across the room from one another. Jason has worked at Intellic. He came and worked at Intellic for a year. Actually, Jason's the reason we got healthcare benefits. After you left, because he needed healthcare benefits for his kids, we didn't offer it. We did a Section 105 reimbursement plan. You should have a conversation with Jason Doy about the arc of his career and ask him what he's doing today. What he's doing today is he's having his name mentioned at HiveMQ events in Miami. He's got anyone who's doing anything with data centers wanting to talk to him, and ask him what his career looked like. Ask him. Just go and say, dude, tell me what you've been doing since 2012. It's going to take him an hour and a half.
Jason is also hosting a table talk.
Yes. The answer is Jason did a lot of 80% stuff. And then he moved on to the next domain that he needed to become an expert in. Okay? All right,
really quick at the end there.
Yeah.
How I did it, and people view me as a subject matter expert on a lot of different things.
And you are.
And I started as an OT engineer. And The way that I got to this point, and how I would recommend anybody else try to, is don't assume that you're the expert on anything.
That's right. Dunning-Kruger.
If you walk into a room and you think you're the subject matter expert, you're not.
You know what my biggest fear is? My biggest fear is that one of you is going to come up to me at this show and ask me a question I can't answer. And my team will tell you that I spend more time preparing myself to answer your questions than most people do doing their job. I spend more time reading every single night, 2.5 hours every night I read. The first 90 minutes is just industry-related topics. And the last hour is me reading what I want to read so I can fall asleep. And the reason I do that is because you guys think I know a lot, and inside my gut, I don't think I know enough. So don't ever think, the moment you think you're the smartest person in the room, find a different room. Find a different room. Immediately. Immediately. Don't be the smartest person in the room. Will you make the ProveIt UNS public for everyone to run their own ProveIt session, maybe read-only access? We're actually talking about doing this. The architecture is structured now. HiveMQ's improved even more to the point where I think we can probably pull that off. And so we are in conversations to do that. The read-only access already exists. We could already share it with you. It's really just a load test issue. And the answer is almost certainly yes. Okay? This year, we don't have any proprietary data in the virtual factory.
Hit me up after 2. I have a way to make it recordable so people can play it back on their own infrastructure.
Perfect. If you are or are working with a small to medium manufacturer, where should I begin with digital infrastructure? This is a good question. What essential factors should we consider? You go first.
The first piece is the drawing that is now gone.
Yes.
Is how does the business operate?
Right, and how is it connected?
How is it connected? What do you have? What's good enough? It's an 80% rule on the SME. It's the same thing on the technology. You have every single one of those boxes, from how you do supply chain planning to how you sell stuff, all the way through how you ship it and how you get it into the customer's hands and how the customer gives you feedback on that product, are all somewhere in the system. Whether it's manual, whether it's a conversation, whether it's a fully digital system, it's happening somewhere, somehow. And if it's not, before you even digitize, you need to figure out how you do things. But from there, once you've identified what the business runs on and the current state of the technology, then we need to figure out what's good enough. What don't we need to touch yet? What do we need to touch now? Where are the holes? And let's plug those. And then we start to connect things. And this is where, in the technical side of things, we have the old ISA 95 triangle, PLC, SCADA, MES, ERP, all that kind of stuff. And no matter how far you abstract that, you still end up with 5 layers, UNS or not. You always have a controller of some form, something that's doing a task. You always have an integration layer between that and an application, typically at the plant level, and another integration layer between those plant level applications and the enterprise applications. And once you abstract it into those layers, find the UNS, get things interconnected, and have those 2 solid integration layers, then we can start adding leafs and nodes to the side, connecting the existing systems. The ones that can connect get connected, the ones that don't connect get upgraded, and the ones that can't connect or that don't exist get added. And you slowly start to do the old adage, connect, collect, store. And then from there, you connect, collect, store, solve your use case, identify the problems, connect, collect, store until you have the data you need. And then you get iterative loops until once you've connected, collected, and stored the data to solve your first problem, then you analyze, visualize, solve that problem. And then you go back and do it again.
I think I'm going to incorporate it into the answer that we're going to do, that we're going to record. I'll incorporate my answer, but I'll start here. The first thing that you must do, the very, very first step is an inventory. It is a quantification of what's there. Where is it? Where do I want to go? How do I get there? So you start with, what do we have? Right? You take a full inventory. That is total number of PLCs you have on the plant floor, the total number of embedded controllers, the total number of proprietary solutions, the total number of pieces of software. Before you ever talk to IT about what does our network infrastructure look like, okay, you take an inventory of the OT side of the business, and you have it on paper in a reference architecture. Then you go and you take an inventory of the network infrastructure. And then you do what we're going to answer the second question in a second, which is, there's a couple questions in here like, recommend an effective tech stack with the fewest vendors among the 51 great companies here? All right, you guys are really trying to get me in a lot of trouble. I'm gonna answer it. You know I'm gonna answer it. There's another one here, explain your strategy with clients on standard out-of-the-box versus custom-build solutions. Let's say this, let me say this. There are very few solutions that you can buy out of the box in industry. SCADA is one of them. SCADA you can do out of the box. You still got to build it and wire it together. But you can do SCADA out of the box. You can never do MES out of the box. Let me say it again so there is no misconception here, and I would love somebody to debate me on this one. I'll ruin, if you're an MES engineer and you believe that you can buy MES off the shelf, come up here and let me change your career for you. We'll change your job title too. You cannot buy MES. You cannot buy MES. You always, 100% of the time, build MES. But does that mean that you can't start with a standard out-of-the-box solution that you build around, like Jared demonstrated when I gave my keynote in the morning? He showed you how to build a completely custom solution, unique solution that bolts into a standard solution that I had already implemented. And I will share the video of my ProveIt session.
There's one I can answer in 2 words.
Yeah.
Why red and blue namespace?
Yeah, we're gonna answer it. We're gonna answer it.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna answer that.
Okay.
So the question is why the red and blue namespace? And then there was a question in here which was, can you scroll back up? I don't know if you, recommend effective, explain your strategy, what's red and blue? So we're gonna do red and blue. Why do you need red and blue namespaces? And recommend an effective stack, okay? I'm not afraid to recommend the stack, but I wanna start with this. Your stack will change. Mm-hmm. Your stack is gonna change. You're gonna add to it, you're gonna take away. You know the number of people who have come to me and said, hey, do I replace Ignition, Hyatt, and such with Litmus? And those of you who have asked me, I have not told any of you to replace it with Litmus. What I've said, or they've asked the question, I want to do Litmus, do I put it on L4, do I put it on L2? Dylan and I had the same conversation about it. We both agree where it should be landing when you're going to introduce Litmus. And you should never be replacing when you land Litmus. You should be landing Litmus primarily at L1, L2 to start, and then move it up the stack. And then you should compare your existing infrastructure to the features that you can develop inside of Litmus. And if you go, well, Walker, I don't want to spend whatever it is, $25,000 a year on the Litmus license when I'm already spending X. Okay, if you are that focused on licensing, you have a bigger problem you need to focus on. Value. You're not doing a good enough job with the tools you have. If you are that focused on how much a license costs, then you are not yielding enough value from the solution. That's your problem. Your problem is not a cheaper license. Your problem is extracting more value from that which you have and break that down into its subparts. Do I have enough staff? Do I have the right people? Are we focusing on the right problems? Are we approaching solving problems in the right way? Do we have the right architecture? Are we doing this under a digital strategy? Does anybody even know what the minimum technical requirements are? And if you didn't answer no to every single one of those questions, licensing isn't your problem. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right, so what we're gonna do, I'm a little fired up this morning. Day 3. Yeah, it's fucking Rick, man. He came at me on LinkedIn. So
Do you have a response to that?
Yes. Oh, he responded to me? Yes. Did he apologize?
You'll see the message.
All right, here's what we're gonna do. We gotta frame this. So it's why red and blue, and can you recommend a stack? So we're gonna do is this the YouTube video or is that the live stream? All right, so I have to do my take 0 thing and everything. So we're gonna shoot the YouTube video here, but we've gotta come up with the question. And the question is, what is a good starting tech stack out of the solutions, out of the 51 vendors here? And why do we need red and blue namespaces? This is a good question to answer. All right, so we'll go, why red and blue namespaces and what products you should start with, take 0. All right, here we go.
You want me to ask the question?
Yeah, do it.
All right, so Walker, Dylan, why red and blue namespaces, and can you recommend your tech stack? Smaller.
You got it. All right, why red and blue namespaces, and can we recommend a starter tech stack from the 51 vendors here? Take 0. Cue the music. All right. First off, let's start here. One of the things we got to start with here is our stack. Everything has got to be in the context of the automation stack, all right? You guys should have seen this a million times. All right, Dylan.
Yes.
Let's talk where we've got a plant. We've already walked it through. We've taken the inventory. We've taken the network inventory, and we've decided, hey, we're going to go network address translation to these 2 production lines, and we are going to find a low-hanging fruit solution that we're going to build. And we've asked the question, what are you guys good at? What are you bad at? What's missing? And what they've said to us is, we're really good at fighting fires, we're really bad at predicting problems, and what's missing is access to the data that'll help us predict problems. There's some executive in the room who said we want to do predictive analytics, and we've ignored him. Okay, we've ignored the predictive analytics guy. All right, we've had some executive in the room who said we want to be AI first. We've also ignored him. We smiled while we ignored him, but we ignored him too. Okay, and we have focused on, okay, why don't you tell us why you want to be digital? We'll provide the architecture, and we'll provide the minimum technical requirements. And they say, the reason we want to be digital is because we want to enable our people to solve business problems with data. And we've said, actually, why don't we build a digital infrastructure so they can solve their problems in service of the business's problems? And they said, yes, we're on board. All right, we've got our use case, we've got our 2 production lines.
The problem we're trying to solve is that we don't even know what problems we need to solve.
Correct. The problem is we don't even know where to start. So what we've done is we've identified, they've got a production line, and we've asked the question, how many units comes off this production line in a year? And they say we do 100,000, let's go a nice round number. They do 120,000 units, which is 10,000 units a month. They do 120,000 units a year off this, and we go, why is it you don't do 240,000? That's the first question we ask them. Why is it not 240,000? And oftentimes they will come back with the theoretical capacity of the production line. I always love this line, the theoretical capacity. Who the fuck came up with the theoretical capacity? The guy with the stopwatch? The guy with the stopwatch realizes that that's not theoretical, right? He measured the capacity. All right, so they've got a theoretical capacity of 140,000, but they don't do a very good job. So they do 120,000 a year. And we've decided that we're going to give them insight into why it is they don't do 240,000 in a year. That's our goal. Our goal is to say, you can actually do 240,000, and the reason we know this is because Dylan and I do MES systems. If they're doing 120,000 units in a year, what is the average OEE calculation when you first start collecting OEE digitally in a manufacturer? It's in the 30s, correct. It's in the 30s. So if we go from, let's say it's 37 is the average, it's right around 37. We're going to be able to operate under the assumption they're going to be in the 30s on OEE. Now, we'll be screwed if they're actually in the 80s, but they would also be a unicorn, so we're not worried about that. All right? And we know we're going to go, the problem we're going to solve is we're going to give them their digital infrastructure, and we're going to give them insight. That's the problem they're asking us to solve, but we're going to go, no. The problem we're really going to solve is we're going to tell you why it is you're not doing 240 in a year. We're not going to ask them for permission. Why is that? Because there's someone in the room getting paid because they're doing a good job doing 120. And if you do 240, is that person going to like you? If they're the director in charge of the budget that's paying you to do the solution, are they going to make sure that you don't get paid and get you the fuck out of there in a heartbeat? Absolutely. Does anybody disagree with that? Or does everyone go, no, the director would, the director who's been collecting a bonus for the last 6 years on 120,000 units a year, he's absolutely going to be excited that it now magically can do 240. Does anybody disagree? Okay, because I've gotten more directors fired over what we're about to do right here than I care to count, right? So now we're going to do that. So first off, where do we start? What are we going to do here? So we've got connectivity to the production line. So we're connected. We've done network address translation, but we're not collecting any data off the production line. Let's walk through it.
Yeah. So first thing we got to do is figure out what the data is. So we've connected to it. We've got the network. What is the data? Where does it live? What controllers is it? And then from there, what protocols do they use?
All right. So what we're going to say is this is a 5-cell production line, and that 5-cell production line, we're using Q-series Omron PLCs. Okay. So we're going to pick Q-series for a couple of reasons. Number one, we'll have a technical issue with UDP versus TCP. Q-series is a UDP. All right, John Weber's like, yep, Walker knows his shit. All right, so we're going to do Q-series PLCs because we're going to run into a technical issue there. We'll have to jump that hurdle, okay? A lot of engineers will run into problems on the Q-series PLC. But we got 5 Q-series PLCs. Actually, let's say 4.
Okay.
Q-series Omrons, all right? And inside those Q-series PLCs is a lot of process data, okay? So mostly analog and discrete values. There isn't any abstracted values. We have 400 discrete alarms, no line state.
So 400 discrete alarms, process the data, discrete and analog, nothing instantiated yet, so I'm assuming no state controllers or anything of that nature.
No state control whatsoever. All right, so what do we do here?
So the first question is protocols, UDP versus TCP. So then we need to figure out from our list of vendors who supports the Q-series protocols from a native driver perspective.
All right, yell out a name. Who should we use to collect the data? There's a reason I picked the Q-series and I didn't pick a ControlLogix, because that would immediately steer us towards ignition. If we pick the Q-series, we're going, it's a no-brainer, we got to land ignition because it's going to talk directly to the PLC. Not that an ignition gateway will not talk to a Q-series PLC. It will talk to a Q-series PLC, but not optimally. So we've got to use a different tool to do this, okay? So what do we land? What do we decide to pull the data out? What are we going to use?
So before
what are you going to use?
What we're going to use is I'm going to go through and evaluate every piece of this, and I'm going to go, some of the 3 ones that come to mind immediately, and then we can just start discounting things from there, is you've got the traditional option of Kepware.
Yep.
You've got...
By the way, 5 years ago, Kepware is the only answer in my opinion.
You've got the easy answer in ignition.
Yep.
And you've got the incumbent and the new answer in Litmus.
And we're going to go with Litmus. Why are we going to go with Litmus, gang? Why are we going to pick Litmus here? Why would I pick Litmus? Why is it I'm going to use Litmus to talk to the Q-series? Right there, here we go. So,
and as we're choosing that, part of the process is going to be not just what connects to these PLCs, but taking inventory of what else is on the floor and what is going to be phase 2, phase 3, and what might be phase 5. The further out you get, the less perfect you need to be. But you need to have a plan because you don't want 10 different vendors doing device connectivity. You don't want too many MSAs, you don't want too many vendors to onboard and too many vendors to manage relationships with. So we need to try to find, to the best of our ability, the vendor that's going to grow with us to the largest extent. And because of Litmus's extended device driver capacity, even more so, Ignition's really good with process industries, it's really good with PLC-centric pieces, but once we start getting into more specialized machines, more unique protocols, and things like robots and CNCs, we start to need a more robust layer.
All right, then what we're going to do is we're going to build blue namespaces. And those blue namespaces are going to be manifestations of the raw data in each PLC. He would call it red, I'm calling it blue. Blue is the unstructured.
At this point, I call this blue.
Okay, we're pulling unstructured data into this blue box. So we've got blue here, okay? However, I may create a red namespace, which is an instantiation of the description of the asset, okay? So I create a red namespace underneath each of A, B, C, and D. And that red namespace might be asset ID, it might be a serial number, it might be manufacturer, it might be install date, it might be, I will define the namespace as 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 parameters that lands inside of every asset. That's a red namespace. It's universal across the entire infrastructure. The blue namespace is unique to the asset. There are 3 types of namespaces: descriptive, functional, informative. Descriptive hardly ever changes, they instantiate. Functional is basically everything. OEE is a functional namespace. Control is a namespace. Changeover is a namespace. Okay? But also Walker's test namespace for trying to determine how much electricity we're using per glass jar in the furnace in my glass manufacturing is a blue namespace. But we may decide to promote that to a red namespace across all of our furnaces if we do it right. All right, so we got Litmus for our connectivity. We all agree that this is living inside of Ignition. So this would be Ignition here. Why do we use Ignition? Because it's a platform for solving problems. We can also build our initial unified namespace inside of Ignition. But where would we scale to? Here are all the places I would scale. I would put TatSoft out on the production lines. Eventually, I'm either going to use Litmus and or Hyatt for data operations out here. I'm going to put Google Cloud Services up here to stream my data. I'm going to offshoot my namespace to HiveMQ as I scale. Those are all the real products I would use in this case. And anybody who's seen me teach knows that this is what we, and by the way, that's not inclusive. That's not exactly what you should use. It's what I use. But to start, the first thing I do is install Docker and Docker Compose on the server. Then I install Portainer. Then I install a Docker Compose stack that just has some analytical containers in it. Then I deploy Ignition. Then I deploy Postgres. Then I deploy Litmus. That is my starting development stack, 100% of the time. All right. Anything else you want to say about red and blue namespaces here?
So I think there might be a difference in terminology here, not intent.
Yep.
This right here, when we started, when we first made that for the first project without permission, I call that blue.
Correct. Until we make it red.
Once the enterprise has said, we're going to use this to solve all of our problems in more places in a standardized way, this whole namespace here is now red. That blue is red, and now this here is governed. So now everywhere we use this namespace, we know that it came from this type of data through this type of platform,
through this type of PLC,
through this type of PLC,
yes,
in that way. So that when this goes up higher in the stack to say Google Cloud, now we know where it came from, why it came from, and how it came from, so that we can make use of it as the enterprise layer.
Right. This would look like function dot metadata dot metadata dot metadata dot metadata.
Yep. And the importance there is traceability and quality through metadata.
Here's the most important thing. The most important thing is the 1% and the 1 and 99% rule. Okay? One of the biggest challenges we have is we have people in here with very advanced digital maturity, and we have people here who are brand new. We have questions in here that they're coming from people who are brand new to digital transformation. It's basically Chinese to them. And our answers have to work for all of you. Okay? So I want to talk about the 1% and the 99% functional capability. The biggest mistake you can make as an engineer or as a product, all you OEMs who are in here listening to me, here's the thing that drives me the craziest, the most about you, 3 things. Number 1, you don't talk about solutions and problems enough. You don't measure solutions and problems. You measure leads and conversions. Stop doing that. It's stupid. We don't do that in our companies. Everybody wants to know why I'm as rich as I am. It's because I don't focus on the money. Anybody who works for me will tell you I don't focus on the money, ever. Every single person here will tell you. I focus on solutions and problems. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is you're all terrible at describing what your product does. Problem number 3, you're really bad at collecting from your customers the 1%. What does the iPhone do? Hold on, I know we're over. What does the iPhone do? This is an important conversation. It takes calls. Everybody's got a smartphone. Every single person, 100% of you have a smartphone right now. And you did not buy it for the 100% of its capability. You bought it for 1%. Apple mastered the art of selling you the 1%. Nice, clean, touchscreen, beautiful, pretty app store. And you assume that the phone worked and you could text message. But it does so much more. You can write Python on here. You can connect it to an MQTT broker. You can track your kids. You can manipulate your portfolio. You can plan your vacation. You can pay your bills. It's insight into all of human knowledge. But they don't sell insight into all of human knowledge. They sell a 1% feature. When you get started in digital transformation, sell the 1%. Insight into current state. Where are we right now? And how do you sell insight into current state? Reveal to your organization that they're blind by asking questions. Which assets are running right now? Just ask that question in a meeting. How do we know what's running? How do we know what work order is coming up next? How do we know whether or not that work order is the one that we should start next? Start little. Litmus, connectivity, ignition, or pick a different platform. You can use TATSoft here. You can use WinCC COA here. Okay? Any other comments, questions, concerns?
And this is, if our starting point is starting from connecting to the data in the PLCs in the plant floor, it is, as we said here, Litmus to ignition up the stack. The other angle of problems is if we are looking at this from the top down, and we need to get data from our ERP, our quality management, our supply chain, that's where we get things like Fuse, and then when we need to bring in the plant floor, we get Litmus, we get ignition, and these two angles come together, but that might be a future video.
Semiconductor, biomedical, this is going to be critical manufacturing. It's not going to be ignition there. Okay? So the answer, it's a risky answer for us. Okay? Because every vendor here is here for a reason. They deserve to be here. And if you work with any of the vendors here, rest assured that they are going to deliver on your problems. Just make sure that you come to that conclusion through questions, statements, answers, and due diligence.
Every vendor has a unique solution to a unique problem, and every end user has a unique problem.
That's right.
And that is why everything we recommend here is an example of what could be, not what's necessary perfect for you.
All right, and like, subscribe, comment down below. Thank you for being here from ProveIt 2026. We will talk about the e-commerce website coming up here shortly in a later, I'll do it in the fireside chat. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you have your booth number in case anybody wants to continue the conversation with Dylan?
Yes, we are booth 19. If you go down the escalators, go into the room down there. We're booth 19, straight out from the door.
Hey, we do a good job.
And don't forget to hit up as many of the bronze sponsors as possible as well. They're in that back row. They don't have time on stage, so they're not going to get as much of your attention up here, but they all have really good solutions that you should definitely check out.
Awesome. Hey, also, can we get all those questions? Can we get all those questions? All right. Hey, that's the number one, that's the most questions in any session. All right, go ahead.